Byron McDaniel, Commissioner for District 3 and the Chairman for the Board. I'd like to welcome everyone here today. We're here today to have a concept brief on the Valentine PUD. And today's date is the 19th and the time is 2:31. And so with that, I'd like to go around the table and do self-introductions. I'll start with Commissioner Buck.
Yeah, Mike Buck, District 1. Welcome today.
Okay. Yeah, just push it on. There you go. Okay.
Gigi Green. And Cindy Pedrioli with Farnsworth Group.
Okay.
Kelsey Lanham, Land Use Planner.
Dallas Schroeder, Commissioner, District 2.
All right, thank you. So with that, who wants to kick off the?
It's going to be me.
Okay.
We're encountering some technical difficulties here, so give me just a second.
So while you're doing that, I'll just point out you had another person join us. If you'd introduce yourself, please. And push the, there you go.
Megan Gardner with Vasco Consulting.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry for the delay on that. I'm Cindy Pedrioli with Farnsworth Group. I'm the applicant on this, and we did introductions. So I'm going to go ahead and go past that slide and on to the vicinity map. So just a quick overview to orient you where we're at. We're about 1.5 miles from the eastern town boundary of Elizabeth. The site is located on the southwest corner of County Road 25 and Highway 86. It is in the county and not in the town of Elizabeth. The site is just over 158 acres, which actually includes County Road 25 on the eastern boundary. Actually, the entire right-of-way of that is technically within the property. As I mentioned, it's on the north is County Road, or is Colorado Highway 86, and then on the east is 25. The County Road 25. There is not any roadways on the west or south property boundaries. Right now, current access onto the site is near the fence, the shed area and windmill, kind of down in that northeast corner of the property near the existing structures, as well as 2 gates off of the highway, one on the very far northwest corner and one a little bit further east of Columbine Drive, which is on the is the access road into the neighborhood on the north of the highway there. The site generally slopes with the high points being from the northwest and southeast into the central drainage that bisects the site. As you can see here, basically there is a drainage that runs through that entire area. While the drainage that diagonally bisects the site is often dry, it appears to have significant erosion, which indicates significant strong water movement, likely from fast-moving and strong storm events such as we get here in Colorado. It is designated as Zone A in the FEMA flood insurance map, which is considered a special flood hazard area and high risk. And so that is why, as you'll see as we go through this, why we are generally avoiding that area. The county's Public Works Department will also review the more detailed design of the project based on the Mile High Flood District's criteria manuals, and they rely heavily on those FEMA maps, the FERMETs. So we anticipate establishing water quality and detention pond areas developed between the development areas in this corridor, keeping most of the site disturbance outside that corridor. And just as a FYI, the FEMA Zone A definition is areas with a 1% annual chance of flooding and a 25% chance of flooding over the life of a 30-year mortgage. So those FEMA maps are used for insurance purposes, and so that's why it has an insurance indication there. But most of the analysis looks at 100-year floodplain lines on that. So we're actually calling this the 100-year floodplain as well, based on our surveyors' data that they pulled up. So. I mentioned CDOT access, and I want to take a little deeper dive on that. A little bit of background. Through the records research we did on this project, it was determined that there was an A-line restriction on access along a portion of along most of the frontage along Highway 86. The A-line actually starts on the property frontage of the parcel west of the site and ends before County Road 25. Per right-of-way plans and deeds from approximately 1998, this property is currently allowed access points on the northwest corner of the property and at the existing gate partway along the frontage, approximately where you see that number 6 on the south side of the highway there. Both of those are 24 feet wide and not in alignment with any other roadways on the north side of the highway. We started conversations with CDOT about a year ago, and per CDOT staff, A-lines are typically implemented along interstates to minimize access points onto the interstate. Because this area has shifted to a new CDOT region in the last few years, there's not any staff knowledge as to why that was in place on this particular section of the highway. However, in discussions, CDOT did indicate that they would support the removal of the A-line and a different access point on this property, specifically one that aligns with Columbine Drive to the north, to better space entrances in the corridor. However, CDOT, as part of their process, requires local agency, in this case Elbert County, to make request via letter as a supporter, and we have been making that request through staff on that for the last year or so. And there was some indications by staff that making a formal application on this would get that process going. And so we're at that point where we need that letter to also come from the county and move forward, because that is approximately a 1 to 2 year process with CDOT to get all the legal steps realigned to remove that A-line. Regardless of how this project proceeds, the existing access points at the existing gates don't align with any other roadways, but do grant some access to this property. But we would prefer that it align with the intersection across the highway, Columbine Drive, and we'd like to go ahead and make that request kind of as part of our concept brief as something to keep in mind as we move forward. The plans that we're showing you today also do show that anticipated alignment with Columbine Drive. In addition, with the development of this project, we do anticipate needing to, based on traffic counts and CDOT's requirements, we anticipate needing to add XL and decel lanes for the property, and possibly one on to turn right onto County Road 25. But the initiation of that A-line needs to happen first. We do anticipate the majority of the traffic for this project to use the exit directly onto Highway 86, with some part of the residential traffic ultimately using County Road 25 to access the highway. So this drawing that you're seeing here is also the one that you have in the packet we gave you today, and one that was submitted as the concept brief in December. The design is focused on market-driven uses, and we're trying to provide a framework to allow that flexibility while also providing limits and guidelines to direct the development in a thoughtful manner. Commercial on the northwest corner, as you can see, and quieter residential or mixed-use type in the southeast corner near the existing residential. The site is currently zoned ag with an EDZ overlay on the northern portion of the site, and the EDZ can be used without rezoning. However, not all of the commercial we're proposing is within that zone, so we're looking to not pursue that EDZ. The owners are choosing to proceed with a PUD in order to customize and more clearly define the uses, specifically including allowed uses that may fall within multiple zones. Specifically on the commercial, we were looking at I, B, or C straight zones, and some of the uses kind of crossed those categories or weren't included in all of those categories. Specifically, one that comes to mind is office with outdoor storage, I believe is in one zone, but doesn't really work for the rest of the use that is being considered on one of those parcels. We also, that also applies to the southeast corner. We want to customize the types of residential or mixed uses here that make the sense outside of the straight zoning. As I mentioned before, the drainage will continue to follow the historic patterns by flowing into the existing corridor with water quality and detention uphill from that area, and those are shown on that plan in blue, kind of the blue ovals that you see there. The open space listed in the land use summary chart, just as a heads up, does not include buffers, setbacks, configurations that may maximize open space in the residential areas or any parks developed within the residential. We do anticipate leaving the majority of that drainage in its natural state, and may look to add additional trails and opportunities for recreation in that area as well. The project anticipates having one or more special districts to operate and maintain the infrastructure, roads, open space, and open space areas. The neighborhood meeting was held in mid-November and was attended by about 40 to 50 residents. The primary themes of their concerns included residential uses and compatibility, commercial viability, water use and various pollutants, and visual appearance from Highway 86, because it in part serves as the gateway to Elizabeth, and then also places for the community, specifically youth, to have access to. So I will be touching on a couple of these as I walk through more details of the plan and how we acknowledge that, and we want to work on a couple of those items. I'll mention that as we go through this. This is the phasing plan. We anticipate the initial phase to be on the northwest corner and include the primary access into the site and a few commercial lots in the first phase, with the first phase of RV storage. Ultimately, the phasing may run concurrently or overlap depending on demand, but the ownership has plans for RV storage on the west side of the commercial area within phase 1A and 2. The remaining commercial, residential, and mixed-use parcels would then be up for development within the parameters of the PUD development guidelines that we create. Other phases could happen concurrently with one another as the market demands. With each step, uses will be evaluated to stay within the water rights for this property. We're planning a centralized potable wells, at least 2. We anticipate 1 in the commercial section, and then the other 1 or 2 may be in the residential mixed use area. As the south half comes online, additional wells and septic sewers would be developed for that demand. We may also be consolidating wastewater treatment, specifically in the south side, but the plans are still in the very preliminary stages. Right now, we are looking at primarily septic. Utility and roadway improvement phasing includes the largest amount of infrastructure is going to happen, of course, in that first phase. It'll require the improvements to the highway for the access and establishing the utility infrastructure and setting it up for phasing, including the water loop system, septic systems on the north half of the site. And then depending on fire access requirements, roadways will be expanded with each phase of development to provide required access, with the roadway going across the drainage and connecting to County Road 25 when life safety requires it. So right now, as you can see, we do accommodate some of the roadways in those phased areas. So we're looking at least a portion of the first phase to just be in off of Colorado 86. And then, as I mentioned, depending on what fire requires, I'm guessing there's a threshold of square footage or population that would trigger us to connect to County Road 25. The county will also determine what the trigger is on the County Road 25 roadway improvements, but we have been talking with them, and we anticipate at least the length from the highway to the access point to be paved. So those improvements would happen with the development of this parcel. In the commercial area, we anticipate limits on uses. Specifically, we're focused on limiting uses that have a higher impact with smells, noise, and traffic considerations, as well as water use, to restrict those uses. And so that's part of why we're looking at the PUD, so that any use within a straight zone isn't necessarily allowed, but that we can kind of customize those to limit the uses. Based on the topography on this site, we know that we can't necessarily have large areas that need a lot of floor space or parking, flat parking areas. 2 of the concerns of residents during the neighborhood meeting were visual impression along the highway and water use. We look to craft our design standards, and we'll be very intentional for natural but design landscape along the highway frontage. It'll include designated setbacks, screening, cohesive colors and materials of commercial buildings, and parameters for housing. Our team is very tuned into the design of low water use landscapes, and we're not anticipating including unusable turf, and we'll focus on native and low water plantings along this area as well as throughout the property. Uses are being eliminated that would be high water users. and such as marijuana production, manufacturing, or large gathering places like large theaters or kind of commercial, or not commercial, like large event centers. On the residential and mixed-use side, current county zoning categories don't include options for clustered development, attached units such as duplexes or garden homes, or clear options for senior housing or nursing facilities. The 2022 Housing Needs Assessment included numerous recommendations to reduce the barriers for development of products that are typically lower cost to build. Specifically, workforce housing needs are estimated to be 63% of the total projected future housing needs, with senior and other non-workforce housing at about 33%. Clustered housing, attached units, or providing options for modular construction would actually reduce water use, keeping irrigated yards smaller. We would anticipate through the design standards limiting the number of units in this area and restricting heights specifically, but we can get even more detailed than that. We're very conscious that this area was the biggest point of concern in our neighborhood meeting and want to craft standards that mitigate some of those issues. For this area, we would include we have actually included a larger setback in the graphic from the neighborhood meeting to the one that we submitted for the concept brief. We now show a 75-foot setback along the east property line in order to provide more distance from the residential uses east of this property. Standards would establish, as I mentioned, height and density limits and maximize naturalized open space. We're open to discussing those further and also anticipate this section to be further out in developing than the commercial segments. Water use and market demand for these areas will also play into what ultimately develops, but we want the PUD to provide guardrails to that development. We anticipate to include things such as building envelopes further away from existing properties, limits on heights and densities, and style and color guidelines while still allowing creative housing solutions for the community. A big driving factor in this area will also be the sanitary sewer and septic needs, as well as the water rights that this site has. And so those both may push the products or lot sizes to be more specific or limited. Again, we don't have a specific product in mind for this part of the site, but wanted to provide a PUD that can accommodate housing that can benefit the community as people move through stages of life, from young people leaving the nest but wanting to stay close to home, to local seniors looking to downsize or needing additional medical care. Thank you for the time to present to the board. We're aware that the development of any kind in Elbert County is a sensitive topic, but we also know that the community also supports property rights. We're working to make this site a project that will be viable to build and meet the market and our community needs in this area of Elbert County. Our team is available to answer any questions, and any that we cannot answer, I can take back to the team to get answers for you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Schroeder, do you have any questions, comments?
Thank you for that presentation, very thorough. Appreciate it. Just as a full disclosure, I live down 25 and up through there, about 2.5, 3 miles off the highway. So I'm familiar with this property. I'm familiar with County Road 25. I drive it at least once a day back and forth from home. Just so that's out there. I'm not within the quarter mile of anything in there. As this goes forward, I'll continue every time you come before us with a presentation to let that be known that I do use this road, and to let you know I believe I can make an unbiased decision as we go forward. But just for the full disclosure of that, because of my familiarity with the road, this sometimes you might get a little bit more scrutiny than if you didn't know the road so much. As you move forward, and I know it's might be difficult to work with the United States Postal Service, but the bank of post mailboxes that looks like it's going to be just to the north of your entrance off of County Road 25. I could see that being a little bit of a danger zone through there. It already kind of is, and people coming home, parking right there, hopping out to get their mail. And so I would encourage you to try and mitigate that as much as you can. And maybe it's not until the time when the paving project takes place. But as I was sitting here, I was just thinking maybe a little bubble that would come off of that, so it wasn't, because right now people are basically parking right in the road to jump out and get their mail. And with that extra traffic, when we get the homes in there, making that corner right there might be something that could be a problem. I don't know how feasible it is to work with the post office and on getting those moved. I would imagine originally when that bank was put up, it was servicing far less homes than it is now, and probably wasn't as big a concern as it is now. But everything from that subdivision to the east, everything down 25, 132, 27, all those, if you're going to have mail delivered to your home address, is right there. Because of that, I have a post office box. I'm not going to have my mail delivered 2 miles from my home, but that's why there's a lot there as it expands. So that would just, as I said, you get a little more scrutiny when I know the property there. As far as the letter for the Class A, whatever, the A-line restriction, does that need to include that we would like to see a realignment with Columbine as well? How that letter needs to be submitted?
I believe it can. It could just also be that we are wanting the A-line to be removed and alignments to be worked out with the county. I believe we wrote a draft letter that we provided to staff that was pretty generic in that regard, but basically we as the private land developer, landowner can't make that request. It has to come from the jurisdiction.
Understood.
But you're welcome to put in it if you want that changed.
So if I'm understanding correctly, as we sit today, the concept is that all the different parcels will be on their own septic system?
That's what we anticipate right now, that each parcel would have its own separate septic system. We have been talking around the ideas on residential specifically, if it makes the most sense to do a centralized system on that or not. That's the only one that we're not sure about, and I don't know if we can answer that specific question until we get into more detail on the design, but that's up for consideration on that one.
Okay. I just know that in past we've had conversations with different businesses and stuff, thinking specifically of your medical mixed use there, which I'll get to that. I love it. But having a facility that big on a septic system can sometimes be difficult. And so that would be something that as you move forward to really evaluate and make sure that that's going to work with that. As I look through the packet also, it looks like there are plans to use water from all 5 aquifers. Is that correct?
Right now, I believe that is anticipated. They were talking about, obviously it's more expensive the deeper that you go, but they were looking to start with the more shallow ones and then go deeper as needed.
As needed. Which that would be a little bit of a change from what we've done with past PUDs. Generally, the PUDs will start down the Denvers and working their way up, trying to save, quote-unquote, save water for the Dawson areas. Not saying that that's just conversation point here is what we're doing, of where we're at there. Onto the mixed use, particularly with all the senior living, assisted living options there. I love seeing a concept come forth that has something with that. It's something that is really needed within our county and community. I know a few years back when I was with my father, we ended up in a facility in Jefferson County for him because there just wasn't anything nearby. And to make that weekly trip was a chore. And to have an option here, I really applaud you at putting that together. Coupled with that, my other question then is, as that's close to where your residential area is there a thought that that can also act as more patio homes too? You mentioned as people downsize to where this is a kind of a progression. They can be in a smaller, more manageable home while they can. Perhaps the spouse is in an assisted living there and still be close. Is that kind of the concept, or are they really not put together? They're just two separate things.
I think it definitely is a possibility. Right now, we've had a wide variety, a scattershot of ideas for the residential. We've looked at kind of a little bit of everything, but I think until we get a builder or somebody that's specifically interested in that, we won't be able to necessarily narrow it down. But we have talked about senior living, and we did talk about that a little bit at the neighborhood community meeting as well, to try and mitigate some of the concerns on traffic. Typically, senior housing does tend to have a little less traffic to it.
Was that received well?
And it generally seemed to be more interest in that than other, but still, the ultimate preference was no development, of course, at all. So there's a middle ground there.
Understood. My last comment on the northwest corner, going to the cul-de-sac there at the end of the commercial. I love having an opening and an option for adjacent parcels to be able to connect. We talked about that at our 1 o'clock concept brief, and being able to connect parcels like this, I think, is a real benefit for congestion, for road usage, and so I applaud that. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but to have an option there that it could in the future, I think, is a real plus there. So I applaud that part of your concept brief as well. I'll stop talking now, but I may jump in later. But I do appreciate the thoroughness of the briefing.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'll just say you addressed some of my questions, but I do have some concerns about the Upper Dawson and how much water. So have there been any studies done yet? Are you doing any studies for the water?
Our engineer has evaluated it, and he's also been working with a water engineer, but I don't know if we've studied it like regionally, just more on what the water rights are versus what the availability is. I don't know if they've gotten into the detail on that. Okay. More specifics. Is there something specific you want us to investigate? We're more than happy to pass that along.
Yeah, there's, we're very concerned about the Upper Dawson. It seems like people just in the past have gone in, because it is expensive to go deeper. Concerned about that being a problem for us. And of course, you hear about this 300-year water for the county, but that's not necessarily so. Anyway, if you come up with anything on that, if you would let us know, share that with us, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. That's all I've got. Commissioner Buck?
Yeah, you guys answered a lot of my questions as well. In regards to the RV storage, you have a potable water tank fill station for the RV, approximately 245 spaces. When someone fills that tank, is there a cost associated with that?
I believe that there probably would be. We haven't worked out necessarily the business model on that, unless Melissa has anything she wants to add on that, but that's something that we would look into. I believe the idea is kind of premium storage and then services and sales that kind of cater to that. So there would probably be fees associated.
So that'd be metered and. Yeah. Well, because I share the same concerns as the other two gentlemen about the Upper and Lower Dawson, to be honest with you, because it says you must withdraw from the Upper and Lower Dawson upon build-out to meet your water demands, is what I have in my packet. So from what I'm hearing, you're going to be selling water to residents of your RV or customers of your RV storage and selling water out of our upper and lower or upper Dawson for that matter. So I'm not sure I'm okay with that. And I'm also looking at the lot sizes on the residential, decent lot sizes, almost 11,000 square feet, but you have an irrigated area of 5,400 square feet approximately, 50%. And we just heard a presentation not more than, an hour ago, where that irrigated area was 2,000 square feet. So you guys are more than double the irrigated area for a residential lot than the previous applicant that we just heard. And my concern is that we have done nothing in this proposal that I can see to conserve any water. I would like to hear more specifics on your conservation efforts if you have those, but that's kind of what it's jumping off the page as far as I'm concerned. So the water's a big deal. The senior needs, I applaud Dallas for bringing that up. I think that's a needed concept and housing need here in the county. When people downsize from their ranch or whatever, they want to stay in the county. You know, they can't maintain the 35 acres or bigger parcels of land, and they want to stay in the county, and they want to find something that's affordable. So I applaud that patio home idea in conjunction with assisted living was also a thought as well. So a lot there, but let me see if I have anything else. It doesn't sound like any other commercial and industrial has been identified other than storage along the frontage there on 86. Just kind of leaving it open depending on who wants to buy it or rent it or what have you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all I had. You guys were very thorough, and I appreciate it, but definitely the water's a concern. I don't want somebody in here selling bulk water or any water off the county and off of that plot of land, to be honest with you.
Okay, we'll definitely look into that and explore that as a little further on that. Maybe that's something that we don't offer in that as well, so.
All right. Kelsey, do you have anything?
Nothing from me at this time, no.
Okay. Anything else, ladies? Everybody's good?
I think so.
Well, it's pretty easy. Thank you for the detailed report, and look forward to talking to you again in the future. And with that being said, I'm going to close this meeting, and the time now is 3:11. Thank you again.